My Lords, I believe that the Cass Review is an extremely thorough summary of where we are now and the pathways available for young people that we need to explore. The most important point to make in this report is that it gives a way forward for young people and their clinicians who feel anxious and frightened because they find themselves at the centre of a political maelstrom. The most balanced response to the report I've seen, interestingly, came from Stonewall, who were consulted by Cass, and I've used some of their points here. Cass says that these youngsters have been sorely neglected by the NHS, who sidelined them away from mainstream care and services for which they have fallen short. She points a way as to how we can start the process of making it up to them by giving them the holistic care that they need and deserve. Despite the way the report was received by certain gender-critical individuals, it doesn't question trans identities or recommend rolling back to healthcare access. It doesn't say that puberty blockers are unsafe or dangerous, but it does say that there is insufficient and inconsistent evidence about some of the effects of puberty suppression. In addition, it notes that cross-sex hormones are a well-established practice that have transformed the lives of trans people and supports their use from the age of 16. Importantly, it doesn't at any stage suggest a ban on social transition for any age of child or young person, but recommends that it be done with the support of parents and clinicians. Cass says that gender incongruence is a result of a complex play between biological, psychological and social factors, of which social sexual orientation can be one of many. There are many factors and there is no simple answer. For example, that young people are simply confused gay people, unhappy teenagers, or it's all the fault of social media. That's all too simplistic. But regrettably, this hasn't stopped the government from spinning its own version of who is to blame. For example, the statement by Secretary of State Victoria Atkins this week says that Tavistock clinicians almost always put children on an irreversible path to blocking puberty, then prescribing cross-sex hormones and onto surgery as an adult. This is not my understanding of the situation. In 2019-20, only 161 under-19s were referred by Gender Identity Development Services for puberty blockers, and it was estimated that only around 1 in 6 GIDS patients ended up being prescribed with puberty blockers. My Lords, isn't the picture bad enough without painting something even worse? There are currently over 5,000 children on the waiting list for treatment. The NHS has confirmed that everyone currently on puberty blockers via the NHS, which is less than 100 children, will be able to continue them. But these children and any new recommendations for puberty blockers will not be prescribed unless they agree to take part in a clinical trial to properly test the effectiveness of puberty blockers. So my first question for the Noble Lord the Minister, can I ask how long it's going to take, does he estimate, for this clinical trial to be set up? And speaking of waiting lists, I understand that it currently takes 3 years waiting for a child on the list to be even seen. So how will the trial ever be set up, except for the few on puberty blockers now, while the rest languish on waiting lists for years while their puberty seeps away? So my second question is, how long does the Minister estimate it will take So I asked you that question. I won't ask you again. Sorry. Will the Minister not agree with me that it is time to make up this shocking treatment that has, or rather hasn't, been given to children by the NHS and put them immediately on a path in priority with other NHS services? My lords, these are our children. They and the clinicians who want to treat them have been intimidated by the toxic environment that we all have helped to create. I've heard the Cass report described as a rock that we can now all cling to. We will never all agree about some quite fundamental issues regarding trans and the nature of trans, but we must never make our children suffer for it. We must never make our children pawns in a zero-sum game. We must rise above it and argue well, with more light than heat, to protect our children, who, after all, must be at the centre of all we seek to do.
Minister.